go ahead and live your best life. Lies, misleading. There are consequences to having sex, whether that be pregnancy or an STD or a feeling of not feeling empowered after having sex, but instead feeling really disgusting or sad and lonely after a one night stand. And that is why I dislike hookup culture. People that live amongst one another, whether we like it or not, we are a community of people, and we should hold each other responsible. You can't not care about your fellow human being. And when a thing is wrong, or when a thing has the potential to go south, it does. And I just feel like it's unfair to give a person one side of the information and not the other. So yeah, that's really been the turnaround when it comes to sex. And I've had just as big a turnaround when it comes to men. There are, of course, bad men out there, the abusive, narcissistic, love-bombing, manipulative, gaslighting types. However, I know now that the stance I used to hold about all men being trash or being bad is both false and unfair, and it's flawed. There are also really good men out there, really good men, and I refuse to subscribe to the idea that they aren't, especially now that I've dealt with the issues I had with my own father. Hi community, welcome back to A Cup Full. Thank you so much for joining me. In this week's episode, as per the title, I wanted to talk about how I have been repairing my relationship with men and sex. So, what has prompted me to want to talk about this is the ongoing conversations I've been seeing on social media, specifically TikTok, between women, men, and then men and women. The deep dives I've been doing on both topics, and then also my personal journey over the last year. So it's been because of a few things, but I've been sitting on this one for quite some time, and I said to myself, I want to take the time to put it together properly so that when I bring it up and I encourage you to talk about it or to think about it, then it would have been from doing enough research and just also being in a place where I'm comfortable enough to talk about my own personal journey. So I have such different opinions on sex and men now in comparison to a year ago, heck, even as far back as 5 years ago. And I also know now that when it comes to both topics, there is so much that can influence how a person or people feel about both of those things. In my earlier 20s, sex and my relationship with men, or how I perceived men, was not very healthy. Now, you've got to know that I also used to be a serious feminist. Like, I was a radical feminist. And I had this I want to be very careful about how I choose to word this, but very complicatedly toxic idea of men and sex. And that eventually translated or showed in my real life interactions with both of those things, or men and then sex. Over the last year, it also became very apparent that my very non-existent, and I also want to say broken relationship with my father throughout the years played a big contributing role to my perspective on men and sex. And obviously, also the traumas I had experienced were factoring into this idea that I had of both of those things, of the men and of the sex, and just not even the act itself, not even partaking in the act itself, but what it represented to me, and my idea of it wasn't very healthy. So, disclaimer, while I no longer categorize myself as a feminist, there is nothing wrong with the movement. Well, with the actual movement that believes in achieving equality between the sexes, what I no longer agree with or stand behind is radical feminism. And to cut a long story short, I have grown up. My social and political views have changed a lot. I have changed a lot. My emotional and mental state and well-being have improved significantly. I personally believe that the rhetoric that radical feminism is pushing is contributing more harm than good, and can sometimes be misleading in its messaging and what it is encouraging women to do and believe in. So whilst I very much still believe that feminism has value, I'm not a feminist myself, and I specifically am completely against radical feminism. I have spent the last year single. I've been single for the last year, decentering men. And by that, I mean not making a romantic relationship the end goal or doing things to appeal to the male gaze the end goal. Like, I don't do that anymore. I don't make appealing to the male gaze the end goal anymore. And I've also taken the time to intentionally get to know myself. At the beginning of this 1 year journey, I did not know who I was and what I actually believed in, not what social media was telling me to believe in or what my mom believed in or what everybody else believed in, but what I actually stood by and stood behind. I had no idea. I didn't know at all. And so I was kind of wishy-washy without being rude. No rudeness intended to me, or I'm not trying to pick at myself at all, but I really didn't have a backbone. And that's the beginning and end of it. I for sure had social media brain. And I would kind of just believe in whatever because that is what the masses were going with. And it was easier to go with it all because I did not have a cooking clue what I actually believed in. But at the root of my confused views, ideas, and mind was a very confused and broken person. I was traumatized and in a lot of internal pains still, because while the journey to healing was happening, there was still some layers that needed to be peeled back even more. And I've been doing a lot of deep diving into trauma, and I'm even reading a book called What Happened to You by Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. And there is so much detail in that book about how unresolved trauma can be the cause of a lot of one's actions and behaviors. Excessive partying, drinking, alcohol, excessively doing drugs, having sex with multiple different people, stealing, lying, cheating, people pleasing, shutting down during conflict, losing your temper, impatience are all considered as coping mechanisms and outcomes of unresolved trauma. So, yeah, it took a breakup for me to realize that. It took not being in a romantic relationship anymore to see that there was a void I had been trying to fill through a romantic relationship, through adopting some of these very radical views also, through being part of the masses' way of being and thinking, the chronic social media use. It was never, ever the void that I had. I didn't know, I didn't realize it was never, ever going to be filled by anything other than healing and a solid relationship with God. I am completely and absolutely devoted to God now more than ever in my life. And that has happened in this year of just taking a step back and trying to understand who I am, what I want, what I like, what I don't. And so, yes, I'm so grateful. God has saved my life. I highly recommend that. I highly recommend pursuing the Lord. But also, if you might not see yourself as a Christian or you are not there yet, there is nothing better than just healing overall and dealing with the issues that you have and recognizing that you have issues in the first place. And it's also really amazing how my relationship with God has just changed my perspective about sex and men. And I can't not speak about how God has completely changed my heart, changed my perspective, changed my mind. I spent the last year really connecting with God, reading the Bible, praying, fasting, and working on getting out of some of the bondages that I was deeply wrapped up in. And one thing about God, when you give him everything, he will take everything and not use it against you and not try and hurt you. But instead, he's going to give you an opportunity, or he's going to give you a chance. He's going to give you a chance to heal. He's going to help you heal. He's going to walk that path with you. he's just going to cover and protect you. And that's exactly what's happened to me. So this hasn't all just come from therapy or acknowledging that I have issues and actively working on them. This has come from being in a very deep and solid relationship with God and giving my entire self to Him, even all of the brokenness. So, yeah, my relationship with God has just changed my perspective about sex and men. There is a selfishness that I had before that is gone now. And by this I mean everything was always about me before God worked on my heart. This was when it came to everything, but for the purposes of this episode, sex used to be about fulfilling my desires, feeding my flesh. It also used to be an escape for me, the place I would go when I wanted to feel good about myself. And that is not healthy, and that is never a good enough reason to have sex, because if you can only feel good about yourself when you are doing something, whether it's sex, whether it's eating, whether it's shopping, whether it is pleasing other people, then you don't actually feel good about yourself, and you need to continue to do things to be on the go, to do something to feel good about yourself. And you should be able to feel good about yourself just sitting on your own, reading a book, or laying in bed, or listening to music. So that's not healthy, and it's also just not a good enough reason to have sex. And you see, that's the thing, that's something else that I've learned, is that something like sex, something like having sex with another person, there should be a good enough reason to do it. You can't just do it because of it's the cool or trendy thing to do. You can't just be doing it because of you are in a romantic relationship with the person. Oh no, that's definitely not reason enough. And so, yeah, I have throughout the year learned, realized that I had very unhealthy attachment to sex, and my perspective on it was influenced by some of the worst influences possible, social media for one, and obviously then this pain that I was feeling, this void that I was trying to fill. So yeah, we also cannot forget the impact and effect of the sexual revolution and feminism. So not just social media for me, not just the pain and the suffering, but also feminism. And for me, I think feminism became an escape, radical feminism. So yeah, the kind of feminism that I used to subscribe to, go wild, have fun, casual sex is fun. Don't worry, it's your body and it is your choice. There will be no consequences to doing whatever you want. Go ahead and live your best life. Lies, misleading. There are consequences to having sex, whether that be pregnancy or an STD or a feeling of not feeling empowered after having sex, but instead feeling really disgusting or sad and lonely after a one night stand. And that is why I dislike hookup culture. Now I hate it. I used to think that hookup culture was cool, and I used to think that it really is fine. People can go out there and do whatever they want with their body, and no one should tell them otherwise because it is their body. But that's wrong. That is very, very misleading. And I just feel like hookup culture and the sexual revolution, it can be misleading, and the information that it spreads sometimes is misinformation. You see, for somebody who is 18 or 19 or 20 or 21 or 22 who is listening to a radical feminist or reading an article by a radical feminist or reading a book or just listening to commentary on social media, and they're hearing a person say, this is your body, you get to do whatever you want with it, and no one should tell you otherwise. That is a person whose brain, number one, is not fully developed. Emotionally, they are not fully developed. These are people that still need guidance, and there is no one more impressionable than a young person, a young man, a young woman, or a young girl, or a young boy. And so to say that to them is just unfair. It's like telling an 18-year-old or telling a 21-year-old that go on ahead, start a OnlyFans, make money, and don't worry about what other people have to say. Digital footprint is a real thing, and taking your clothes off, taking pictures of yourself where you are naked or videos of yourself where you are naked and posting them on the internet is not something to be taken lightly, because one day when you aren't doing that anymore and you have a family, or maybe you don't have a family and you aren't doing that anymore, and that's not a part of your life that you want to be revisiting anymore, that's still there. It's still on the internet. Somebody took a screenshot, somebody took a screen recording. And there's the thing with anything that goes online is that you cannot fully delete it. So to tell young people, or to tell just women in general, that go on ahead, do whatever, that's not right. And I don't agree with that. And I just feel like, as people that live amongst one another, whether we like it or not, we are a community of people, and we should hold each other responsible. You can't not care about your fellow human being. And when a thing is wrong, or when a thing has the potential to go south, it does. And I just feel like it's unfair to give a person one side of the information and not the other. Sure, it is your body and it is your choice, but going and having an abortion can have these consequences. People that are pro abortion, I don't really hear in the discourse them talking about, this is what's going to happen, or these are the possibilities of, so this is what you are risking. This is how this is going to affect your body. There is absolutely nothing wrong with having information exist for people to look up and see, okay, these are the pros and these are the cons. And I think that in these kinds of conversations, there needs to be proper information, the pros and the cons, not just the pros, because that is again misleading, and that is lying to someone. It's always if them kids, but it's never, okay, you are going to go ahead with this. These are the emotional effects that this is going to have, because they are, most likely, I have never had to go through that, but I can imagine, and even with what I've seen, some people that have gone from being pro-abortion to pro-life, that went through having abortions themselves, they have said that it has the worst mental toll on a person, and the worst emotional toll, and you're just never the same again. And so that's why I say it's misleading, and it's unfair to just say to people, go on ahead, do this, your body, your choice, without really explaining the consequences to them. And it's the same with things like OnlyFans. It's the same with things like going out dressed in a certain way and then getting completely drunk, and no one ever talks about how there are risks to doing that, how unsafe it is to do something like that. It's just go out, have fun. It's your body, it's your choice, it's your freedom. And yeah, it's just, I'm actually just thinking about how I saw somebody make this very comment, that it's so unfair to young girls especially, and young guys, to tell them to like go out. It's their choice, they can do whatever they want, it's their freedom, they can do whatever they want, that they don't need to really be considerate of the fact that they live in a world where there are people that are on the job, being predators is their job. And so you are misleading those people, and you're saying this to them, and a lot of what that person was getting is, yeah, you are the type of person to be a rape apologist, you are the type of person to promote rape culture, and you're the type of person to blame a woman when she has been assaulted by a man, by saying things like, you can't go out dressed in a certain way and then get completely drunk and not expect that you're endangering yourself, or that something bad can come from it. So again, I just feel like we're taking so many steps back when we don't want to have the real conversations, and we just want to make it seem like there are no disadvantages, there are no cons to behaving in certain ways, or to claiming certain things. So yes, I just think we should be a lot more careful, and I just wish that hookup culture would die. I really, really, really do. I don't know if that will ever happen, but yeah, there's just so much that I don't like about it. And also, I had this idea that casual sex is fun and empowering, and it isn't. And you shouldn't have to realize that in your late 20s when you have had sex with multiple men who you gave a piece of yourself to that you are never going to get back, because you bought into or were told or encouraged that the more people you have sex with, the more liberated you will be or feel. And I also just want to add that this idea that you need to explore with multiple people sexually to know what you want is the biggest lie that the sexual revolution has sold us. Sex is sex, whether you have it with one person or whether you have it with 100. There is absolutely nothing that is going to be different about it. The act stays the act. And so this idea that we have to explore and feel people out or feel sex out and just understand what it is that you want as a person or that we want as a people lies. And I'm so shocked at it. The more I hear it and the more I sit with myself and think about it, it's actually so shocking how people are encouraged to and cheered on when they have a roster or when they are with multiple people at the same time. And it's never that you run the risk of getting sick or you run the risk of soul ties with all of these people that you're having sex with. It's always that it's cool. No, you could meet one person and have sex with that one person for the rest of your life, and it would still be an enjoyable thing. God made sex to be something that is enjoyable. He made it to be so that both parties are exploring and experiencing themselves and each other. And so, again, the idea that you need to do it with multiple people to feel it out is false. And it is only going to cause you more harm than good. I know that what feminism says is that we should respect people's choices, but I also know that that when you have a right, you also have a responsibility with it. There's a responsibility that comes with it. And I just feel like as somebody who's a lot older, I'm now far out in my 20s. I will be 30 not too long from now. I'm just thinking about how I refuse to be somebody who is going to mislead young girls and guys. I refuse to be somebody who's just kind of throwing people to the wolves when I know better. I'll repeat it. Sex is enjoyable with whoever you have it with. And so it is pointless to have it with multiple people thinking that you are trying to feel it out and understand what you want. You can figure out what you want with one person. And the best part about that is you won't feel like you are gross, or you won't feel like a piece of trash, or you won't feel like there's something that is missing when you won't feel that way, because you are doing it with one person who you are married to, who you are with forever. And there's just also an intimacy, a sacredness that is preserved there, and also a safety that you get to establish between the two of you. So if you sit and really think about it, this idea is very flawed, and it kind of makes it seem like the act of sex, the enjoyment of it, is going to change if you choose to have it with 5 extra people instead of just that one. No, that's not true. That's very false. It's the act itself is enjoyable. So, yeah. Just think about it and be very mindful. Just be very mindful before you choose to partake in having sex. And just think about it. You know, when I said God has changed my heart when it comes to sex, yeah, I'm very aware that this is my body, but I'm also aware that it is a gift from God and that I have a responsibility to take care of it. I cannot be engaging in acts such as sex with just anyone for the fun of it, and think that there will not be any consequences to that. Also, not just anyone should have access to me, not just anyone should have access to you. And most importantly, opening the door to feeding lust, that is very dangerous. That's why one of the fruits of the Spirit is self-control. Lust, that was something else that I was in bondage with. Whatever, girl, you get me. I feel like I was feeding into a cycle of lust. And when you are lustful, you will have no self-control. There will be no time to ask yourself, what is happening here? Is this something that I actually want? Is this something that is good for me? Is this something that will add to me in any way? No. Lust is, I don't know. I don't even know. Should I call it a spiritual force? Should I call it a should I call it a ploy of the devil? I do not know. It's definitely sin, and it will consume you. And the thing with lust is once is never enough. That's why some people fall into the cycle of having 5, 15, 20, 30 people that they've had sex with. It's because of you have developed a spirit of lust. You have become locked in with lustfulness and you want to feed that thing. I want to say it's a monster. It becomes a monster and you want to end up feeding it. And yeah, lust is pretty much just doing, it's feeding this thing and giving it the satisfaction. And when the feeling dies down for 2 minutes, then you're fine, and then it's up again. And there's no self-control. You cannot control yourself there. So yeah, gotta be very careful when it comes to that. Also, the act of sex and what happens during that period is not to be taken lightly. Firstly, it really isn't casual. Nothing about it is. The release of hormones, the sweating, the exchange of saliva and other bodily fluids, oh, that's not casual. There is nothing casual about it. The risks, that's not casual. Even with the use of protection, there are still so many risks. Soul ties, a condom tearing. If you're on the pill, anything can happen. You can fall pregnant. And I'm aware that the chances are slim, right? But there is still a chance. Actually, any kind of contraceptive, there's still a chance. And I'm also aware that there are abortion clinics everywhere, but even that can cause so much emotional, mental, and physical turmoil. I saw a YouTube video where a few women were discussing the emotional and physical difficulties they went through post-abortion. And who is amplifying that information? Who is amplifying those voices? Of course, and it's really great that they're doing it. It's really great that they're doing it. A lot of pro-life activists are doing that, but people that are saying go ahead, go have an abortion, go ahead, have sex with anyone that you want to have sex with, why are they not telling people that there are also disadvantages to this? And again, that's what frustrates me, that's what irritates me, that's what makes me upset. It's that there's this one-sidedness to all of this information, and some people have to experience these negative sides or the downside of things before their eyes are open. So I just think we should have conversations that are both sided here, and that people should be given the correct information and not just the one side of the information. This also brought me to understanding why God said no sex before marriage. In the covenant of marriage, where two people are living within God's will, that intimacy is only going to strengthen their relationship. That level of intimacy, sex, is going to bring them close together. And that is one of the biggest things that sex is meant to do. It is meant to bring the people engaging in it, the married couple engaging in it, closer together. It's meant to deepen the bond between two. When I gave myself a chance to really think about it, I realized that by having sex outside of marriage, one, you're tying yourself together with another person's soul and forming an emotional bond. And number two, not out of respect for God or within his will as would be within the confines of marriage, but to satisfy or please a fleshly desire. Some people will say I have sex because it is a need. Others will say I have sex because it makes me feel good. Also, sex is people that say sex is a need when they're just trying to satisfy themselves physically. Oh, that's a bit manipulative. That's a bit manipulative. Yeah. Others will say I have sex because it makes me feel good. Again, you're feeding your flesh. Others will say I have sex because it is fun. Again, you're feeding your flesh. And for me, in the past, my argument was a sign of freedom. My body, my choice. It is something I enjoy, but it was also me living way outside of the will of God. And now that I know better, I'm choosing to do better. And so, as someone who speaks from a place of now being in an actual and healthy relationship with God, having sex outside of marriage is wrong for me as a Christian. It is disrespecting God, and it is disrespecting my body and what it symbolizes. And it would just also be me betraying myself. So my take is that we have been lying to ourselves with the fact that sex can be a casual thing, because the act is what creates a deep bond between two people. It isn't a for fun thing that will not leave you feeling some type of way when the person you did it with was just a one night stand. And I just think we need to also take it back to our biology and just how different we are as men and women, even on a mental level. Whether we like it or not, whether it's something that people want to hear or not, we just have so many different aspects to us. There are different hormones that we have, and different hormones are released during the act of sex. And there are just so many fundamentally different things about us as women, and men and women rather. And I just think that it's delusional to think that you are going to be able to be like a man or react as a man would during sex. Whilst it might just be a relief for a man, you are forming a connection with him as a woman. And as someone who used to be a radical feminist, I used to try and explain my way out of, or try and fight with the truth, with the reality of things, differences between men and women, physically, biologically, mentally, emotionally. And I would try and make it seem like some of these things are made up, but they are not made up. It's science. It says it, that we are completely different people. And I refuse to condone the idea that men and women are the same. We're not the same. What makes us unique, what makes us all special, is that we're so different. And what makes us need each other is the fact that we're all different. So it's just a terrible idea to try and live like men, to try and do things like men. We are not the same as them. We shouldn't be subscribing to the same things that they do. And we should be very strict when it comes to our bodies, our minds, our health, our well-being. Be very, very careful who you choose to have sex with. If you are not someone that ever sees yourself getting married, and that is not something that you want for yourself, but you might see yourself having sex with somebody in the future. I'm not judging. It's your choice completely. I personally believe in marriage, so that's it for me. And that's also what my faith speaks on, the covenant of marriage and its importance, especially in the kingdom of the Lord. But if you're someone that just isn't going to do that for yourself, but you do still believe that you want to engage in intimacy, just be extra careful with who you are giving your body to, with who you are opening yourself up to. There's nothing casual about sex. Ladies, there is nothing casual about sex. And also, something else that I want to mention is that be extremely picky with who you are going to give access to your womb. Because the minute you are going to start talking about having kids with someone, married or not, more like for those that are not wanting to get married, be very careful, be very stingy. Pregnancy, that is another conversation. for another day, but that is such a delicate process within itself. So just falling pregnant for anyone, having a baby with just any man, my sisters, please be careful when it comes to that. So yeah, let's just do a little bit more investigating, think extra hard, ask yourself the really important questions. Don't just dive in headfirst into things without thinking about the possible repercussions of it, especially something like sex. So yeah, that's really been the turnaround when it comes to sex. And I've had just as big a turnaround when it comes to men. There are, of course, bad men out there, the abusive, narcissistic, love-bombing, manipulative, gaslighting types. However, I know now that the stance I used to hold about all men being trash or being bad is both false and unfair, and it's flawed. There are also really good men out there, really good men, and I refuse to subscribe to the idea that they aren't, especially now that I've dealt with the issues I had with my own father. Bless his soul, but he wasn't a good father, and he has never really tried to be one. And even in my adult years, nothing. So yeah, I used his bad traits and his ill actions towards me onto other men. And the hurt and trauma put me in a place where I was of the belief that just like my father, all men are going to leave me hurt. They're going to leave me or hurt me or abandon me, which again is unfair. It's really sad, actually, how much not having a present, kind, loving, and gentle father or father figure can impact a woman in her adulthood and kind of create a bleak picture of men. This can also happen with men, but in this case specifically, I'm talking about women, and I'm speaking on this as a woman who has first-hand experience of the outcomes and impacts of fatherlessness. My dad also, he was in the house for all of my life, for most of my life, before him and my mom separated and split up. But he was not a present parent emotionally or mentally. He was there physically, and that was really it. So yeah, that's also another thing that we don't talk about. I feel like we know of it, but we don't talk about it enough. Just the damage that it does to see your parent or your father as a girl, as a woman, see your father present physically, but emotionally and mentally, and that thing, it's a destroyer. It will completely wreck you. It wrecked me. So I did some research, and according to a Daily Maverick article, only 31.7% of black children stay with their biological fathers, compared with 51.3% of colored children, 81.6% of Indian or Asian children, and 80.2% of white children. And even within these numbers, there is no clear indication of how emotionally and mentally present these fathers are, because a father or father figure being physically present does not mean much if he's emotionally and mentally avoidant, which was the case for me, as I've mentioned. My dad was there, but he also really wasn't. A study of absent fathers in Johannesburg, conducted by Mazimbo A.D. and others for the University of Johannesburg and Sonke Gender Justice in 2013, found that the crisis of fatherhood in South Africa is linked to the broader historical, social, economic, and cultural context. Additionally, the study found that the absence of fathers emerges from various factors such as materialist constructions of fatherhood and masculinity, socioeconomic factors such as poverty and unemployment of fathers, cultural factors, and relationship issues. The authors asserted that although a father's physical presence alone is not necessarily a positive outcome itself, as I previously mentioned, widespread father absence has detrimental consequences for families and society as a whole. The National Care for Fathering outlines the impact of this scourge. While it is challenging to attribute all social problems to fatherlessness alone, research suggests that the absence of fathers can contribute to various negative outcomes for individual communities. Fatherless homes tend to be poorer, there is a greater risk of drug and alcohol abuse, behavioral problems linked to poor emotional and physical health are more prevalent, educational achievement is negatively affected, there is greater likelihood of delinquency and sexual activity, and teen pregnancy are more widespread among fatherless youths. Moreover, there is an argument to be made for the challenges in a child's social and emotional development that impact on their sense of identity, self-esteem, and emotional well-being. There is also often an intergenerational impact, as fatherlessness can perpetuate a cycle of father absence across generations. Children who grow up without fathers may face difficulties forming stable families themselves, leading to a continuation of this problem. This intergenerational impact can further strain social structures and contribute to broader societal issues. In the South African context, there are links that can be made between fatherlessness and gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is so prevalent that South Africa has been compared to war-torn nations. Calls for action go largely unheard, and the scourge persists as the root causes often remain unaddressed. As Yandiswa Sikwei and others found in 2016, children who grew up with absent fathers may be at an increased risk of experiencing various forms of GBV in their lives. However, the understanding of links between GBV and absent fathers is currently inadequate and requires greater scrutiny. What is apparent, however, is that there is a sense of stability in homes with father figures. I'm assuming present father figures. All of this information I got from a Daily Maverick article. I was actually reading a lot of it verbatim. So that's the source for that information. Thought it would be very, very relevant and important for me to just paint a picture of what happens when a home is fatherless. And by that, I mean when the father's present physically, but he isn't emotionally and mentally, and when he is completely not there at all. So yeah, what this article is really showing us and what it's telling us is that a household, children, women who have a strong, loving, caring, gentle, consistent, intentional father or father figure are more likely to be a lot more stable mentally, emotionally. And when it comes to relationships, they are a lot more likely to get into healthy relationships that even go on to contribute towards building a healthy family. This is why I'm such a big advocate for working on or dealing with the really deep issues and getting help, professional help, if that is something that you can afford. Because the things we experience, especially in childhood, such as an absent father and even an absent mother, will affect your well-being, your relationships, and even the choices that you make. As the article mentioned, girls without a present father are more likely to fall pregnant in their teenage years, and boys are more likely to be perpetrators of violence and just overall being delinquents. Not working on those really deep wounds or that lack will also have you in a constant cycle of toxicity. You'll end up with the same kind of person with a different face. So I've been there. I know exactly what I'm talking about. This is specifically when it comes to relationships. If you have a very toxic relationship with what a man is, or you have a very messed up relationship with the person who was supposed to be the father figure in your life, then you are just going to keep on ending up, you're going to stay in the same cycle of being with a person who reinforces the trauma, these traits that you were experiencing through this father or father figure or lack of. So yeah, guys, we have to work on these things. We have to work on these really deep issues, these really raw and sore parts of us that we sometimes don't want to open up because of fear, because of it's just too painful. But doing that is going to literally change your life for the better. I'm so happy that I went there, that I took it there, that I mustered up the courage, even though the courage in the beginning was as thin as baking paper. Yeah, I had to find a way. I had to find a way, because otherwise I was just going to be stuck in the same cycle, and I just didn't want there. I just didn't want that. I also, yeah, like I said, there are good men out there, and I realized too that there are good men out there, but you won't experience them if what sits at the front of your mind is an association with men of pain, fear, resentment, anger, or hatred towards them. The big thing for me has been addressing the underlying issues and working hard to face the truth. American Pastor, Jerry Flowers. Whoa, he's too good. He just really is. He's so good, and he says it as it is. He said in a sermon that there are symptoms and there is a cause, and treating the symptoms without treating the cause is pointless. You are just going to be stuck in a cycle of reaching for a blunt every time you're stressed to calm down. A central nervous system that is not well regulated due to trauma or an extensive period of it being strained and consequently sensitized is the reason why we will reach for something like a blunt or a bottle of alcohol or sex or food or a shopping spree. It's because we are trying to self-soothe. And I learned this in this book that I mentioned I'm reading earlier on in the episode, What Happened to You. It's been such a comfort reading that book and understanding what the effects of trauma are and why they will make us behave the way that we do. So when I used to consume alcohol ridiculously without any self-control, partying all the time, just spending money recklessly, that was me trying to self-soothe. In the beginning, I thought that it was because I wanted to be like everyone else, but it was actually how trauma was showing up, and it was also an indication that my central nervous system, it wasn't doing so great. And so to calm myself down, I would reach for things that were not the best to help me soothe myself. And also, when you don't know any better, when you don't know healthy, when you have not been exposed to healthy, you are most likely going to reach for something that is unhealthy to help yourself self-soothe. So that was also the case for me. Or getting back with that ex you shouldn't be getting back together with, but you're doing it because you're lonely. You would be treating the stress symptom and the loneliness symptom, which will never be enough, and it's not the cause. The cause of the stress might be something specific, but the sensitized central nervous system and you not being able to regulate it may have been caused by trauma. And that loneliness is probably rooted in something much deeper. It really isn't a bad thing to crave human interaction. I have learned relationship with others, really important. Really, really important. Community is so important. Feeling connected to other people is very important. But there is a problem when you are going back to a person that clearly isn't good for you. And getting real with myself as we move forward in a much healthier way, it has shown me that there are deeper issues, and craving unhealthy relationships, craving people that are not good for me, that was a symptom. There was something really deep in there that I had to dig out, which I did. And now I do not have a single desire in my body to be with anyone who is not good for me, and I can spot it from a mile away. I can spot when you and I are, it's just not going to happen when you are not my people. And I'm so comfortable with that, guys. I am so comfortable. I'm not afraid of not having people in my life anymore. I'm not afraid of losing a person when I tell a person the truth that they need to hear. If I lose you, then you were never a real one anyway. When you don't want to hear the truth, for me, you're not a real one. When you don't want to be corrected, you're not a real one. And I don't want those kinds of people in my life. I'm not doing that. So yeah, I'm a lot more open to working with men now, being friends with them and just coexisting peacefully with them. I can also differentiate between a mature man and an immature man. Same with women. But for the purpose of this episode, I find that I'm far less apprehensive towards anything that has to do with men, even conversations. I want to talk to men. I want to have real, deep, meaningful, connecting conversations with them. And it's no longer at the back of my mind or in the front of my mind with the intention to get together with someone, a little sneak in a little kiss there, a hug, a rub on the thigh. No. I actually would like to get to know men and it be platonic, purely platonic. It's just like there's this thing that's been removed, a veil that's been removed from my eyes, and also just this like I said, God has changed my heart so much that my idea of a man is no longer just that it's about getting romantic with him, or it's about getting a kiss from him. Oh, he's so hot. He can definitely be an attractive man, but just not the type of man I would be with. Doesn't take away from the fact that he's attractive, but that thing also about the male gaze and not doing things to appeal to the male gaze. It's just, I want to be your friend. I like how you think. I like how you speak. I like how connected you are to God. I like just the way that you want to engage in conversations and debate. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just about that. There's that selfishness has been removed from my heart, and that lust as well. I find that I'm no longer lusting over men the way I used to. That also used to be something that used to stand in the way of me being able to properly connect with men without wanting to go down a romantic path. And I also no longer seek validation or get validation from men. And that's also why I think I can differentiate between an immature man and a mature man. And I've just found that it's true that this world needs men and women. Sometimes just in platonic relationships, sometimes just as colleagues. For the world to work, it's not always going to be about being romantically involved with someone. And like I said, you can appreciate that someone looks good without completely drooling over them and wanting them. So yeah, got a lot more healthy about it, and I've got a very much more healthy, and I'm going to say a much more realistic perspective that I have of men. So yeah, and when it comes to romance and getting involved with a man, I really look forward to being with a kind-hearted, gentle, assertive, responsible, caring, faith-driven man. And I know that is very much going to happen, especially because I'm intentionally working on myself, and we know it is true that you are going to attract where you are with yourself. You will attract what you are deserving of. You are going to attract how much work you've put in yourself. That's it. Overall, life can be very unpredictable, and we can all plan and work on ourselves all we want. But ultimately, the plan or the plans that will prevail are God's plans. But we still have to live intentionally. And so I'm trying to say that just be very intentional and ask yourself and understand where your perspective of men comes from and why you see men in the light that you do, especially if it is always negative. Okay? And yeah, just move with good intention and live intentionally when it comes to everything, but even when it comes to this specific topic on men. I also just quickly want to throw some in here. I want to speak on how men are being portrayed on social media and how there's, I want to say, a flawed mentality when it comes to dating and relationships. Men as people that women are meant to coexist with, be in community with, be in fellowship with, be in relationship with, whether platonic or romantic. So I want to start by saying I'm very aware that the order of society is changing. We no longer live in a time where women are relegated to being in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant, and when the man being the sole provider, although this does still apply to some people, or a time, and the man being the sole provider. This does still apply to some people, but there are still women who prefer to be stay-at-home wives and essentially homemakers, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But overall, men and women are both in the workforce. So both genders are making money, have access to things like buying property, a car or cars, paying for travels, and so much more. Which is perfectly fine. It's actually really good that society and the order of it is changing. But I think that in ways we are moving backwards. Okay, but not all of us. Some people are. These might be hot takes for some people. These might be some hot takes. These might be hot takes for others. Some people won't agree with them. Some of you might. But I'm saying this thing. I wanted to start off by making the point that the order of society is changing, just so that I can just paint the picture of how contradictory things are at the moment. I personally don't agree with making men pay for the rest of their lives. You know, this idea that it's retributive justice, compensation. Men need to compensate women for how significantly disadvantaged we once were, and to a certain extent how we we still are. Let's be for real. We have access to opportunities, to work, to schooling, and we no longer need to rely on men for shelter or financial security. I mean, why do they still need to be compensating us? Why? Yes, of course, I absolutely agree with men need to give women space, stop trying to sabotage women in the workplace. If you're doing that, that's not cool as a man, because women work now, women are climbing the corporate ladder, women are opening their own businesses, women are doing the most. So stop being weird, stop being shady. There's no need to do that. Of course, women should have the freedom to exist and be 100%, but I absolutely, that doesn't fly with me, that men need to pay for the rest of their lives for something that was happening 50 years ago, I don't know, 60 years ago, 70 years ago. We are in a different time now. And I think that as much as there are still a number of disadvantages where women are disadvantaged in comparison to men, there are areas where women are leading, and more women are graduating from university, more women are going through school, more women are becoming empowered financially, mentally, emotionally. And of course, there are cases where women are still disempowered, or where women are not being treated well by men. 100% that is true. But we have made so many strides as a gender, and I just think that it's so backward to want to make men pay. And it's one of the issues that I have with this, I'm going to call it social media mentality and even social media feminism, of making men pay, and men must do this and men must do that. But we are trying to get to a place of equality, and it can't be that you are saying you're a feminist or that you are trying to push for equality, but it's only in some instances. If it's when you are having dinner with a man that you have just met, or you're going on a first date with him, then that's their 50-50 no longer applies. But in the workplace, there, you and him should earn the same. I'm not sure. I don't like it, and I certainly don't subscribe to it. So yeah, just something to think about. I think that that's something that we should all be thinking about all the time. But something else is that you should make sure that your standards are yours and not what you're getting off of social media. Shouldn't be what the TikTok feminists are saying, or TikTok girls are saying, or some of these relationship coaches that are helping women get high value men, what they are saying. Just be extra careful, guys, and be realistic. Also, for the people that are wanting to get into relationships, that are actively dating, or that are in relationships are a two-way street. No man is your bank account unless you're an intentional gold digger. Unless you are looking for a loaded man and it's because you want to live off of him, then that's a different story. But if you are calling yourself an empowered woman who is making her own money, and you believe that you can climb the corporate ladder and be successful and still be in a relationship and be fulfilled, then relationships are a two-way street. And I saw one lady, her name is Mrs. White. She's quite popular on TikTok. She kind of reminds me of Shara Seven, the sprinkle lady. I haven't watched her videos, but I've seen a lot of commentary videos about her content. They were saying that they pretty much say that you don't spend on a man, he spends on you. Those women for me are gold diggers. Those are intentional gold diggers. They are not people that are looking to be in a partnership with a person, and relationships are partnerships. I know some people, especially I'm just thinking about the TikTok people, some of these TikTok takes. When I'm saying this, all they're hearing is, take care of a man, carry a man on your back, pay for his petrol, pay for his suits, make him lunch or buy him lunch every day. I never said that. I said relationships are a two-way street. So if you are not a gold digger and you are treating your partner like you are digging for gold there by him, then I think you should review your intentions there. You also don't have to use manipulation, and you don't have to manipulate a man into loving you. Again, I'm going to take it back to the Share 7 lady and even Mrs. White. There's absolutely no need to manipulate a man into being with you. If that man wants to be with you, then he will, and you guys will connect. And if not, then it's just not going to happen. But don't force it. There is nothing wrong with having the standard of wanting to be treated right, but it is unfair to take what other people's partners are doing for them and rubbing your partner's face in it. I'm going to take it back to social media. If he cannot afford it, then he can't, and making him feel bad for it says a lot about your motivation for wanting to be with him. It also says a lot about your character. I listen to some of these takes on social media where women will say, I broke up with a guy because I wasn't getting flowers every week, or he wasn't buying me gifts when I wanted them, or he wasn't paying for my beauty maintenance, and I don't do broke men. And I'm just like, is this not making you think about what your motivation is for being with a person? Because again, I will say this: don't have double standards. Don't say I'm an empowered woman and then want to behave like a gold digger. No, that's not how it works. And that's why I'm saying this whole feminism movement, we're going back. Well, this this wave of feminism, I don't know if it's this wave or if it's just radical feminism, or if it's just some of these wild social media takes, or if it's social media feminism. You can comment, you can say in the comments if you want to add a comment. But I just think that it's taking so many steps back or it creates a double standard when you say you're empowered and you work and you love to make your own money. But if a man isn't able to pay for your nails and your hair and your installations, then you start to shade him. And if he cannot afford certain things, then you start making him feel bad, and you show him pictures of what other people are getting on social media, or you tell him what your friend's boyfriend got her. That's not it. And it's very your character, poor stuff. The other thing is, ladies, listen, you are not entitled to a man paying for you on the first date, nor are you entitled to him fetching you or paying for your Uber, nor are you entitled to him buying you flowers or any gift, really. You don't even know each other yet, and you are someone who subscribes to, and if you are someone who subscribes to modern dating and you are not courting, then how on earth is a man you are meeting for this first time, and possibly the last time? It would be 50-50 because you might click and you might not, which means both of you are going to go on to other dates with other people. And if he's a regular working class man, how is it realistic and even practical for him to do all of that for a woman he does not even know or like, or maybe doesn't even like you yet? You don't know each other. How are you going to like each other? And I'm not talking about looks. I'm talking about character. I'm talking about your heart, your mind. In this economy. And my thing is, what this really boils down to is humility, kindness, and consideration. There is a big lack of that when it comes to dating today. And a lot of radical feminists will justify that no matter what. And a big part of who a man is, and they'll say a big part of who a man is being a provider, particularly financially. And one thing the girls are right about is that historically that has been true. The radical feminists are right. Historically that has been true. But hear me out. Because of women now, take it back to the order of society, the order of the world has changed. Because of women now work and are making their own money, this is being challenged, and I absolutely love it for myself. I love it for you. That is, as much as I will enjoy being looked after by my future partner financially in whichever way he would be able to afford to, I love that I have access to opportunities to work and make my own money. Love it. But this has at the same time caused a change in the term provider when it comes to men. Bear with me. Holds one. I wasn't there in the early 1900s. But I can only imagine that the only job a man had was to bring home the cheese and done. Hero. And the woman was responsible for creating a safe, sound, and love-filled home. Raise the kids, cook, clean, just do a ridiculous amount of labor on her own with little to no help from her husband. And she couldn't have a say in political issues, nor could she have a bank account in her own name. The list goes on. And at some point, women said, yeah, this isn't working anymore. We deserve for our voices to be heard. And they did the right thing. They fought. over the years, or rather decades, we have moved from one wave of feminism to another. There's been so much progress and freedoms for women that have constantly and consistently, that have given women space. And I don't really agree with some of what is happening in the current wave, but that is a conversation for another day. Anyways, in the process, as expected with the revolution, there have been some big shifts, such as a man's original place in society of being a financial provider being turned upside down. Together with various other factors, I live in South Africa, so I can speak of the realities in my home country, the political history, and the various current day socio-economic issues. They have turned the idea of being a provider right on its head. We have staggeringly high unemployment rates. Our poverty rates are even scarier. Working class and middle class earners, which is a large part of the country, are living hand to mouth, and some need to use credit to cover the bills that their salaries can't cover. Many households here require 2 salaries and a few side hustles to survive. Note, I didn't say thrive, I said survive. If you're black, there is a possibility that you are trapped in the prison that is black tax. Now, together with everything I've mentioned, imagine being a man, living in South Africa, living hand to mouth, black tax at hand, no longer even being able to hold on to the identity of being the provider because New World Order, but still expected to make a plan, pay for the date. Buy the woman an outfit, pay for her Uber. When you're dating, pay for her beauty maintenance. And when you can't afford it, you're being mocked, or maybe you end up being discouraged about finding love because you just cannot afford these ridiculous standards that people have today, women have today. Now, it is obviously a man or men's responsibility to take the lead and figure out this new world order collectively as a gender. Absolutely. It isn't healthy to obsess on what once was when men were still the sole financial providers in households. That won't help because we are definitely not going back to those times. Today, women out-earn men and are more educated than men, and for men to try and fight it or get upset about it will only be moving backwards. Also, as a man, if you are mistreating your partner because she earns more, is more educated, that is an indication of some deeper issues, and you need to ask yourself what they might be. The term provider has changed significantly, and being a provider in 2024 has got to do with so much more than money. Are you providing emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically for the woman you are with? But although men are mainly responsible for spearheading the search to understanding this different time we live in, ladies, women, you cannot be making some of these demands and expect men to just comply. Just comply. Especially the average South African man I mentioned. And when he can't meet your ridiculous expectations, you tell him he needs to catch up, that a man's job is to provide financially. Really. So he's failing if he isn't providing what you want. But he's also failing if he is providing, but just not in the way that is up to TikTok standards or social media standards or radical feminism standards. I can imagine it becomes confusing and challenging for men to keep up because one moment they're expected to be financial providers and the next they are expected to be understanding that women are now leading and women are now taking up the podiums. And one minute they are supposed to understand that women are out earning them, but the next, the same women that are out earning them want them to still provide for them and take care of them, even though they are earning less or even though they are just not able to keep up. And I'm going to take this back to the humility thing. If you are with someone who is dealing with black tax and various other issues, where is your humility there? Or why not just leave him alone then? And don't badmouth him, just leave him alone. Yeah. Also, let's be real about something else. Men's value for as long as forever has been directly tied to how well they can provide. And that's why I said they need to be intentional about understanding what's going on in this new world order. Stop trying to live in the past. But also, women are constantly creating double standards, and it's just confusing. It's confusing. And something else is that when for all of your life, even the men that raised you and society have told you that you are a man only when you are a provider, and now that is being taken away from you. Yeah, that's not something that you're going to unlearn overnight, and it will probably chip away at your self-esteem for your entire existence, especially if you are not at the level that other men are at. If you see that other men are making money and you just cannot do that. And I guess this is why also some some men end up stealing, cash and transit heists, robbing people. It's because their value is directly tied to how much money they can make, how well they are doing materially. There are some wildly ridiculous standards amongst women and wildly ridiculous standards amongst men. I wasn't going to leave them alone. But in this case, on this point, I'm talking about men. As a man, to expect a woman you are meeting for the first time to go home with you, or to even go to a second location with you, to even offer, is it's not very gentlemanlike, and speaks volumes of your character because, hello, I don't know you. We have not built that kind of relationship of trust yet. Women are literally getting kidnapped, trafficked, assaulted all the time in broad daylight and at night. Maybe read the room. Ladies, also please don't go anywhere with a man or men you don't know. Get to know that person or those people first in public spaces. Take care of yourself. Yes, just had to add that there when it comes to the men. Please. And also, I think something else that's really important is just because you are gifting somebody flowers, this is for the guys. Just because you're gifting somebody flowers or you're gifting them a chocolate or whatever on the first date, or even throughout the relationship, doesn't mean that you have the right to a woman's body, or you have the right to just do things to her, make her uncomfortable just because of you gave her gifts. That's also something else that's very messed up. And just as much as the double standards I was talking about when it comes to women, men, there are double standards there by them as well. If there are any guys listening, just go back to the drawing table. Just don't buy a person anything if you are going to have the urge to treat them like they are something that you can just use and then dispose when you feel like it, or use just because you got someone something. Then don't do it. Don't buy a person anything. You either do something for the goodness of your heart or you leave it alone, really. Ladies, back to you. I wanted to say, just on these last few points, I'm almost at the end of the episode. A man is not your father. He can be your confidant to a certain extent, but he isn't your therapist. He can be your best friend, but he shouldn't be the only one. Have other friends, have community outside of your relationship. He can be your safe space, but that doesn't mean that you're going to dump everything on him all the time and not try and do the work. You have a responsibility towards yourself. You always will. So don't abandon yourself, and don't think it's okay to put all your problems on your partner. And obviously, do not accept that from your partner either. Lovingly hold each other accountable. Be patient with the person. Make room for them. And if you can see that they just aren't willing to do the work, leave. Don't kill yourself trying to save someone. I've said it already. There are good men and bad men. It's unfair to categorize them in the same place. If you don't work on any bad issues or feelings you may have that have to do with men, whether that be daddy issues or an ex breaking your trust or whatever it may be, you're probably going to project them into your next relationship. You're going to project that into your next relationship, which will cause a really heavy weight on the quality and how long that relationship will last. Another thing, I've already mentioned it, but there is a huge difference between a mature man and an immature one, and you cannot take on the responsibility of wanting to make an immature man a mature one. He needs to get there himself, and you need to step aside and let him do it. Stop forcing a person to change. It's good that man has potential, but that shouldn't be the reason why you get into a relationship with him. You either love him as he is or leave him alone. If you don't want to work on those deep-rooted issues, said this before, somewhere in the episode, I've said this already, you're going to keep ending up in the same relationship with the same kind of person, just with different faces or different face. And if you can see the pattern, do some introspection. It cannot always be that man's fault. He fumbled. I didn't deserve that. He didn't deserve me. He's a horrible person. Okay, maybe that might all be true, but it doesn't change the fact that you are allowing all of that to continue. You allowed that man into your life, and you were in essence self-sabotaging by keeping him even after spotting all of the red flags. And the thing is, if you think back at some point or another, a person's red flags showed. A man not wanting to take the actual proper time to get to know you is a red flag. Someone that just wants to go from 0 to 100 in no time. We need to get to know each other, our values, morals, principles, likes and dislikes, things we went through as children that might affect how we show up in our relationship, especially if you're trying to be with this person for long, forever. And even in your own lives, like, you know, the list is endless. Now, I know there are some people that did it and it worked, which is great, going from 0 to 100, but I absolutely cannot in my right mind encourage that. There are select few people who have done it, but overall, as a people, we need to take that dating, courting period nice and slow and move with a lot more intention. And I'm just going to say, I really do not recommend having sex before you've properly gotten to know a person. It's very blinding. And it can, what did someone say? It can make red flags seem like they are a rose pink. Because you're wearing those glasses where you're high on the fact that a person is great in bed. Yeah. Something else that's really important that I'm learning in that book that I'm reading, What Happened to You, is that trauma can be inherited. And if you're someone that wants to have kids with this person that you are with, you need to ask the hard questions and have the hard conversations. It cannot be that every time you're on a date, all you do is you look at each other in the eyes, or you just whisper sweet nothings to one another. You need to have very deep conversations if you're trying to set up a life with someone. It's not something to be taken lightly. You have to understand his character and hear his perspective on things like finances, faith, his political views, his social views, where he's hoping his life will be in 5 years, where he's hoping he will be in 5 years, what his general life aspirations are. And this is a good opportunity to see whether you and a person are on the same path or whether you can make the things work. On one of my favorite podcasts, To My Sisters with Renee Kapuku and Courtney Boateng, they said something so important. Modern day relationships are struggling to go far because people are having entry-level conversations and not graduating to anything beyond that. All we are hearing on social media, men must do this, a man must pay on the first date, a man must pay for my Uber, a man must pay for my beauty treatments. Oh, he must get me flowers, he must pay attention to my love languages, my love languages, my love languages. And I'm not saying that those things are not important, but those are all entry level conversations. If you tell your partner, quality time is my love language, and then he spends quality time with you, that's great, but that's not the only aspect of you, of your life, of who you are. And it would be great for you to explain to that man why quality time is so important to you. Maybe you missed having a loving parent who would spend enough time with you, or maybe there's something went wrong and you just never felt loved, you never felt seen, you never felt cared for. So this is healing your inner child. Like, be serious, be for real, have conversations that are graduating, or else the relationship is just never going to go anywhere. And that's the truth. They are so right for that. It can't always be about aesthetics. It can't always be about aesthetics. I love gifts. Then your partner is always getting you gifts. Why? What is at the root of that? What is it? What need was never fulfilled for you as a child? Talk about that and talk that man through that so that he understands what the significance of this is. You know what I'm saying? Let's not have social media brain, guys. Let's not just do because people on social media are doing, or other people in their relationships on social media, that's what's happening. It cannot be that the foundations of a relationship is how frequently he buys you gifts, how frequently he sends you money to get your beauty maintenance done, where he takes you for date night, and how much he spends on the food and drinks, what he wears, how he smells, what his haircut looks like, his job title or position, where he lives. That is aesthetic. It's just not going to be enough to hold a relationship together. Ask yourself, is this a good-hearted, kind, and gentle man? Does he value relationship and fellowship with others? Is he supportive? Can you count on him to be there if you had health issues? Is this a patient man? Is this a God-fearing man if you are a Christian? Is this a man that actually looks out for you and actually considers you? Is this someone that leads you astray or leads you to more fulfillment and growth? Is this a man that is trying every single day and just putting his best foot forward? Is this a man that effectively communicates? Or are you with someone who retreats or gives you the silent treatment when he is unhappy about something, or when he's frustrated about something, or when he's not having a good day? Have you given yourself some time to observe him and how he reacts in certain situations, or does that not matter? As long as he looks and smells good and pays for dates? No, girls. Gotta be careful about it. Gotta be careful about it. So, yeah. Just really wanted to highlight, I hope I have highlighted throughout this episode, that if you are someone that has a specific idea, a not particularly healthy idea of something like sex or men, and it's being influenced by social media, by the traumas you've experienced, just by the masses, then go back to the drawing table. And if you are seeing a pattern even in the types of men that you're getting with, go back to the drawing paper. Go back to the drawing table so you can understand what's going on there and what is influencing your actions, your perspectives, your ideas when it comes to these two things. Yeah. Wow, this has been a good one. I kind of felt so nervous at the beginning of recording this episode because I don't usually talk about things like sex on this podcast, but I've come such a long way, and I hope that this will encourage you if you were looking for a sign to really interrogate the kind of relationship that you have with sex and men. I hope that this will be a sign for you to do that and ask yourself some of the questions that need to be asked. Okay? This is definitely where we are ending this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining me. My voice is crunchy, cranky, a little bit it's a little bit tired now, but I really enjoyed recording this episode. I really want to hear from you. I think I'm going to leave a question in the question box on Spotify. I can't do it on Apple Podcasts, but I can do it on Spotify. So I think I'm going to leave a question. Please do engage with it. Let me know what you think about this episode. Let me know whether you have had some changes in ideas when it comes to sex and men. If you are wanting to put anyone on, please do let them know that they can find A Cupful on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube Music. Really, we are everywhere. All you need to do is just type in A Cupful on whichever platform you are listening on, and you will be able to find it. Let whoever know that they will be able to find it. Cupful is also on TikTok. The handle is at acupfulllpod. If you are wanting to communicate with me, share thoughts on an episode, the DMs are always open, and I will be more than happy to hear from you and to respond as well. Otherwise, you can just send an email. All of that information is in the show notes. Have a lovely remainder of this week. Rest when you need to, work when you need to, be kind to yourself and others. Take things nice and slow, one foot in front of the other. Ask the questions that you need to ask to yourself, to others. Have the hard conversations. And most importantly, keep doing the things that fill your cup.